growing up. And I wanted to help people. I loved science, anatomy, neurology. And I'm an easygoing, fun guy. So all of that came together when I shadowed this chiropractor. And I was like, oh my gosh, you get to help people and you get to use your hands and you seem really happy doing it and they're happy to be here. Like, I'll sign up for that. So that started my journey to be a chiropractor. And fast forward to literally almost graduation, 2 weeks before I graduated, which was just a couple of weeks ago, actually just last week, my daughter was born, and that shifted my perspective. I was going to be what I guess I would term, a regular chiropractor, focusing on back pain, neck pain, wellness, sports injuries, those sort of things. I knew nothing about the true impact that chiropractic could have on ADHD and on pediatrics even early on. And all that shifted. My perspective shifted when I became a dad and started that journey. So I signed up for the pediatric certification and courses and started that literally the day after graduation. And it was sitting in the class about neurosensory disorders, ADHD and SPD, over a weekend where literally everything I'd always known just finally hit me, one of those light bulb moments we all have many times in life. And I realized that chiropractic had not only helped my sore shoulder and stiff back, like the awesome chiropractor I started with in undergrad told me, but all of my focus, attention, sleep. Dr. Brad, I was a kid who for 20 years, as long as I can remembering, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't fall asleep. Therefore, the next day I couldn't focus. God had blessed me to kind of have a supercharged brain so I could sit down and take a test and score well, but I couldn't handle anything in between. In a way, growing up in the middle of nowhere a generation ago, it went under the radar until that time. And it was that weekend, literally 8 years later, that I realized chiropractic had covered all of that for me too. I just never knew because nobody told me. Nobody explained the science. Nobody explained that it would happen. But all of that had shifted. My grades went from C's and D's to all A's and all the way through it. And then the last two layers are crucial too. So I charted this whole course, studied everything there was to study about autism, ADHD, and sensory processing disorder, threw my heart, my head, my soul into it as is my nature, and just started serving kids in my community with that. The first cases we took care of were what we always, it's a joke, but it's a joke I don't like. I wish we want to change it. That's why God bless you, Brad, for doing this and everybody joining in. But my clinic started, we joked we should answer the phone, welcome to the last resort. It was 19-year-olds and it was 17-year-olds, and they were on 7 meds, and they had tried 9 meds, and they had tried everything under the sun, and they were finally ready to give chiropractic a try. And a lot of that's on us too, right? We haven't been able to do these things like we're doing now to get that message out. And that started the journey, started the Perfect Storm Workshop in 2008, and just started really getting out in my community and explaining the neurology that we'll get into tonight, and explaining the science and the application behind what we do. And it started working unbelievably well to get kids' nervous systems to calm down, to focus, to organize, to be able to see them healthy and thrive in school and social and sleep without all the different medications. Again, they save lives and put out fires when they're needed, but it's a struggle for so many families. And then the last layer is Dr. Brad, I think God knew that I'm a little bit of myself, like to go to a lot of different things at one time. So in 2009, he said, hey, just to make sure that this is your track, this Perfect Storm, pediatric chiropractic, neurological challenged kids, my son was born with the most perfect storm birth. And I'll explain what that means later on, the metaphor. Severe traumatic birth injury to his brainstem and to his nervous system. Life flighted in a helicopter to one hospital, sickest baby there for 2 days, another helicopter to another hospital where medicine saved his life. Heart, lung bypass surgeries, all sorts of challenges. But his nervous system, even though they put those fires out for his cardiovascular system, he was supposed to be a kid who, by all other means of understanding, outside of our lane of chiropractic and this world, he was supposed to, if he live a life full of autism, ADHD, and everything in between. And he doesn't. He just turned 9, and he's rocking, and he's rolling. So that was the final proof I needed of early application of chiropractic. And all his EEGs, all of his findings, all of his challenges, never had a seizure, never had any challenges. And so that was the final galvanizing point for me. And now, doing what we do tonight is the only thing I do. I'm either taking care of kids or I'm somewhere in the world, in person, online, everywhere, connecting this message to parents to explain and give them their hope back, then give them their answers and the science behind how this works, and then, give them the action steps, what to do. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, well, awesome. So definitely aligned with that mission there of spreading the message, helping parents and really the kids, live their full potential. So let me ask you it this way. I know we're going to talk, the chiropractic neurology, like you just mentioned, and there's a lot out there about diet and like the biochemistry and those type of things. And though it obviously, the brain has to be involved, behavioral issues and those type of things, we don't hear as much about sort of the neurology aspect of it and maybe what we can do. So kind of as a segue into what you're going to share with us, why don't you tell us a little bit about that and, maybe describe what you mean by the perfect storm also.
Yeah, you got it. And that's what's awesome about being able to be a part of this summit, right? Because you have multiple experts in multiple lanes who can cover a certain piece of it. I kind of always like to start this piece when we talk about it. It's the old plane conversation, of which I've had many, where people go, hey, what do you do? And if they even get a whiff that we're talking about autism, ADHD, those sort of challenges, they always go, what do you think is causing it? And the joke, just to kind of set up what we're going to talk about here, is literally kind of, well, how long's the flight? If we're going to Australia, we maybe have enough time to cover the summit, right? Yeah. And to go through everything that's at this. So that's the idea of the perfect storm. There truly is no one thing. There is multiple things. And where the concept of the perfect storm came from was not a textbook, not my certification, not the schools that Dr. Brad and I went to. It literally came from moms and dads. It came from practice. It came by being trained to be a chiropractor, which means what I need to know is what the parents know. And that is, what's the story? What's the cause? It's not just dealing with the symptoms and saying, okay, here's your survey and your symptoms. It's what's your case history? What was the pathway and the settings and the ingredients that got us to that? And out of that, you're exactly right, Dr. Brad, many of the other ingredients are related to toxicity and related to diet and related to environment and to the gut and to all of these things that are just running rampant in our world today. But the missing link that isn't out there near as much as it needs to be in all these places, and again, I commend you for bringing me here and us this conversation, is the neurological, brain-based, and I'm going to call it chiropractic-based conversation, because that's where I began. 10 years ago when I started putting this presentation together, it was a 4-hour presentation, right? Because I thought I had to cover every ingredient, everything. And then my clinic was, if you began as a patient, you just moved in for a week, right? Because we had to cover so much stuff for you and so many tests and so many exams and everything else. And we finally figured out that over the years, while there is no one ingredient, there is a hierarchy, if you will, or there's a ranking system as to what was the biggest causative factor in what we now see 85 to 90% of the cases. And so the perfect storm is all of the things, but what it's really adapted and molded into over the last couple of years, because this is what the science and this is what clinical experience shows us, is that birth injury to the brainstem via birth intervention, forceps, vacuum, epidurals, inductions, C-sections, breech, cord wrapped. Many of the times, and again, I'll be brief with this, even though it's important, many times, of course, the intervention medically at labor and delivery, absolutely crucial to save the life of the mom or the baby. Many times, and this is not my opinion, this is research on it, many times also not necessarily what needed to be put in play at that time. But what it does is it really wreaks havoc, and it disrupts and it distorts the neurological communication channels and pathways between the brain and the body and the brain. And so a lot of people think of the spine as just this hunk of muscles, ligaments, and bones, as chiropractors are just spine doctors. So if your spine hurts, you get adjusted. The spine doesn't hurt in a kiddo with ADHD, but what happens is the spine is subluxated, stuck in this ongoing, long-standing state of sympathetic fight or flight noise. And what we know about subluxation, especially in the upper neck from that birth injury, is it constantly, even at rest, bombards the brain with what's called nociception, which all you need to know as parents is that's a noisy brain. And a noisy brain is stressed out. A noisy brain needs to move to calm and quiet itself down. No different than when you're stuck on a 4-hour flight and you just want to get up and move. And a noisy brain is so distracted by all of this stress that's stuck on its sympathetic system that it does not spend enough time in growth, concentration, focus, cognitive memory, development side. So this neurological issue is truly a neurological imbalance. And as I kind of told, I knew I kind of would, Dr. Brown, I'm already on it, but this sets up the cascade that I know you do such a fantastic job of talking about with your conversations here through your channels, is we're always told that our children, or if we have it ourselves, it would take a neuropsychologist all of 18 seconds to diagnose me as ADHD, right? Yeah. And I literally say my prayers every morning to God. I say, thank you for giving me ADHD. I get more done by 7 a.m. than most people do because I got a Ferrari brain, but I also have Ferrari brakes and Ferrari gasoline and Ferrari suspension. And what so many kids and people struggling with ADHD have is that Ferrari or Porsche brain with Ford Fiesta brakes and suspension. And then you put crummy fuel into it, you know, recipe for disaster-based ADHD instead of superpower-based ADHD. But, you know, the last thing, and then I'll get into this here, Dr. Brown, and you share what you think, and we can go further into it. We're always told it's a chemical imbalance, right, causing these issues with that. We're then mostly told that's genetic. Bad, you know, your kid got a deck of cards. It's your fault. It's grandma's fault. It's Aunt Jerry's fault. It's, you know, it's the family tree's fault. Just to prove my nerdiness, I was a genetics major in undergrad. People, I went to Iowa State University. I grew up on a farm. We brought you GMOs and glycophosphate. Like I grew up in the source of that stuff, Dr. Brad. It's a weird existence, right? At family reunions for me now. But so I was a genetics major, and I bailed on it my senior year because it didn't even, right? It took 2 or 3 years of college study for me as a college student to open up the book on that and go, yeah, no, it's not that easy. That's not the story. You know, there's so much more to the environmental influence called epigenetics over our genes. And sure, some kids get dealt their deck of cards. This is how I explain epigenetics. Their deck of cards maybe is stacked a bit more to ADHD or out. I got heart disease everywhere in my family. So what I should probably not do is smoke, drink, never exercise, and eat margarine, right? Like everybody else did. So we have to look at this when our kids have these challenges and we have it in our family tree. It's not their destiny. It just means we need to put these strategies covered on the ADHD Summit even more in play, because the chemical imbalance is part of the story, but it is incomplete science. And parents, if you get anything from me tonight, I want you to know that it is not inaccurate science, but it is incomplete. The chemical imbalance has something causing that too. Those chemicals they speak of are they're literally called in medical literature and everywhere, every textbook everywhere, they are called neurotransmitters. Dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine. So our kids who are struggling, quote unquote, have too much of the gas pedal stress ones and too little of the focus calming ones. Well, those are transmitting messages for the neuro system. So metaphorically, when medicine puts a child on a chemical substance to try and level off the chemical balance, they're killing the messenger instead of getting to the source of the message. And that neurological imbalance is really the big missing conversation that needs to start where these kids have their care in a drug-free way addressed from.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. So you mentioned birth trauma is kind of like the one you see the most in that hierarchy. What are some of the other things? Like if a parent's sitting there thinking, well, my kid has all these symptoms, their birth was totally calm, no intervention at all. What else could we be looking at?
Yeah, very, very crucial. You're right. And again, we've seen it, and now there's really great research coming out. We're actually starting to participate in a bunch of it as well. That again puts that mark to 80 to 90% of the time, and really birth trauma being the catalyst that, and we're going to cover both. And then what are the things that are not there for the 10 to 20%? What we're going to discuss with those, these factors that are now going to come in the early childhood stages, they are that much more worse for the child who had birth trauma. Because once that is there and they're stuck in sympathetic overdrive, now their ability to detox toxins, to fight off ear infections, to nurse and latch is already there. So that's the concept of the perfect storm. And most of the time it starts right there, pregnancy and delivery. But yes, sometimes it starts later. Truthfully, it's going to sound too simple, but most of the time when we find a case that didn't have the severe physical birth trauma to it at birth, there's some sort of fall. There was a trip. There was a coffee table to fall over. There was, again, like if we just think about the realities of all this, and this is my farmer simplicity, no kids, even my Cairo babies, they weren't really good at walking on day one, right? They struggled a little bit, right? And fell frequently and did that. So that is there. But the other ones, the big ones, if the birth trauma isn't there, and if it's there, this just stacks on the stress, because most kids go through this other stuff too. It's the early injection, and it's toxins. As we talk about in chiropractic, right, Dr. Brad, the 3 T's, the trauma is the physical element. That would be birth, breech, those sort of things. But the toxins, man, toxins aren't new, right? Our parents had lead paint and asbestos and cigarette smoke, but they are new. How often, how much, and here's another very crucial thing in this combo, how early they're getting into our kids. Because the earlier that it goes into a child's nervous system and physiology, the less their defense has developed. And that's a big, the timing of this. It's not just, hey, did that box get checked and checked and checked? It's when in a child's development did it. And the earlier and the more often, the more that sends them screaming down this perfect storm ADHD path.
Gotcha. So that's why kind of the name makes sense, because it's not just birth trauma, because there's always been that. I mean, not certainly more now,
right?
But then, you add the toxins, you add the how soon they happen, you add how many more kids have the birth trauma. So they're less able to deal with the toxins that are earlier and maybe even different, at least, if not more. And so that's what it sounds like, why we see this big rise in, all kinds of stuff. I mean, ADHD, certainly, neuroprocessing, autism we see on the rise, all of these types of things that affect our kids' nervous system and brain. So then, not to derail the conversation, the perfect storm, but I mean, I think, if I was a parent listening to this for the first time, I'd be thinking okay, how do I know if that's what's going on with my kid?
You got it. And I love this, right? I had a great chat with another literally this very cool thing is going down in the autism world. There's so much like this awesome conversation you're having with the ADHD summit, right? And I got to connect with the person putting that on yesterday. We were talking about that, and she was so excited. She was so familiar with chiropractic and herself and all the open-minded, drug-free first pediatricians and researchers and PhDs that are on her team. And it's extensive, just East Coast people. You know how they roll over on the East Coast, Dr. Brad. They're full charging, right, on that. So this was a sort of interesting combo. They were so in love with chiropractic. They had seen the benefits for ADHD, sensory spectrum kids for years and years and years, but they struggled as they're putting this research together. They struggled to be able to know how to put chiropractic into the research study, because chiropractic has always been a very hard thing to study, because generally all we use for assessment is our hands. And this is where we've really been able to change the game with some of the protocols we put in play and the clinical applications, I would say, in our practice. And then, I've trained hundreds of other pediatric chiropractors. There has now been the advent of what's called scanning technology, literally called the subluxation station, which allows us to and here's the best part about it. It's completely sensory based. It takes 5 to 10 minutes. There's no pain. There's no needles. There's no blood. There's no sedation, right? There's none of that. It's literally just a sensory set of scans for the brainstem and the neurospinal communication pathway. And it can read. So here's what the scans do. It's going to give you 3 things as a parent. Number 1, is my child neurologically imbalanced or not? Are they subluxated and shifted to this sympathetic storm and stuck in it or not? So the first way I think it's going to say is just, is this something that chiropractic can help or not, right? Just kind of bring it in or bring it out. And the second thing is it will then be able to quantify it if it's there. Now that's crucial, because for us to best help a child, we need to use the right recommendations, right? That's another very big, personal, I don't know how else to say it, issue I have with the general medical treatment of ADHD. It's right, oh, here's your survey. you're this, here's your thing, here's your dose, here's your drug. You know, there's no personalization and customization to the care provided. And by the way, we care for these kids. We don't treat, we don't cure. We take care of their nervous system, take the stress off of it if it's there, and the nervous system takes care of what it needs to change their life. But the second thing is it allows us to quantify and measure, literally through metrics, through math. So these scans give out scores and reports for us to see how severely neurologically imbalanced and sympathetic storm is that kid. And the third thing is important too. This is where it really helps us as practitioners, Dr. Brad, is it allows us to really target where the primary subluxation. So it's kind of a location finder, if you will, to kind of think of like a wire sensor, right? And it'll kind of figure out exactly where that hot wire or that hot issue is, which takes everything we're all trained to do as chiropractors. Our hands are living, breathing scans we can take with us forever. But I don't know about you, dude. I got no printer attached to my hands, right? I can't run a score and show a mom and say, this is what we're doing. I can communicate it, of course, but there's so much more value for us as practitioners, for them as parents, when they can see it. And here's the whole loop as to why I love that for parents, for them to be able to truly find out if chiropractic, neurologically focused chiropractic is something that's going to help their kiddo. Because on the other side of it, they're told by practitioners, it's a chemical imbalance, so here's your chemicals to take care of it, but there's no test, right? It's crazy. I landed on the page. We have a kid struggling right now. I say struggling, he's ready to turn the corner. And part of it is when their nervous system is getting better, you know, the medications they are on, if their nervous system challenges have started to be repaired and restored, now it'd be like taking that medication and just taking a child without ADHD and putting them into it, right? We all deal with that in practice, right, Dr. Brad? So this kiddo was at that, what we call launch point. And so we needed to have that conversation with their practitioners, not in our scope of practice, but to set it up and let them know, hey, you need to go have this conversation with your doctor. And I did some research on guancofene was the name of that drug that was there. And I was running all over, right, with the tech stuff before I meant to find it. It literally said, and as a science guy, this is breaking the rules, okay? The WebMD description of guancofene, which at least in my area, that is now the #1 recommended drug for ADHD. It's a non-stimulant, so it's outside the class of Strattera, Concerta, Ritalin, and all the kind of classical ones. But the statement on the first intro paragraph literally says, we don't know how it works or if it works.
Wow.
But they will throw, I'm going to pretend to sound young for a minute. They will throw shade and, you know, dirt at us all day long that we don't have. Well, we know how, and again, a lot of it's been proven over the last 10 years, because that's just what happens. Technology and science catches up to what we've always done. Chiropractic has always helped these kids. We are now, our profession's really doing major things for them. We know exactly how subluxation works on the negative end. We know exactly what it does to the nervous system, to the chemistry, to all of it. And then in turn, we know exactly how the adjustment works to take stress off the system, to activate what's called the parasympathetic, the vagus nerve, and we can decrease cortisol, we can decrease epinephrine, we can see prefrontal cortex activation. You know, research out of New Zealand, I know you're familiar with, Dr. Brad, and that's all there. So I was so bummed reading that because I just know so many parents are stuck with that as their answer, and it's woefully incomplete. But I was also excited because I read it and I go, well, that's not our paragraph. You know, we know what's up and how it works and the science behind it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah, I love the subluxation station for exactly all the reasons you just mentioned. I mean, to be able to not just see it ourselves, but to be able to then show the parent, because so often, you know, especially the younger kids, they don't have, you know, back pain or headaches, or if they do, they can't even tell you. I mean, not that that's the point, but so it's, you know, communication is one thing, but seeing it on an objective measure really makes a big difference. And then also what you said about really pinpointing kind of the main areas, so we all kind of are on the same page. Totally valuable. So then the question I get a lot of times on the phone or when people are referring and that type of stuff is, you know, well, there's a lot of questions, but they're around the fear of what chiropractic, you know, because they've seen, you know, they're maybe a full-size adult and, you know, they've seen somebody jumping on them and they're like, how could I put my 2-year-old kid or 5-year-old kid or whatever into that So how do you respond to those type of questions?
So they spent some time on YouTube watching chiropractors adjust other people at a motorcycle rally, right? Yeah, with towels and contraptions. Chiropractors are the craziest people on earth. Half the stuff we put up, more than half, they put on the internet. You know, the Dr. Brads and I of the world go, probably should have done that. You know, and so yes, this is a great, important question, and I think there's actually two parts to it. First off, when you have a really struggling, aggressive, angry, agitated, impulsive, sensory-seeking ADHD child, the first thing you're probably thinking as a parent is, well, that sounds nice, but ain't no way you're going to get my child scanned. No way you're going to get him to sit down, get scanned, get palpated, get adjusted. There's no PowerPoint answer to that one either, other than I can tell you, the Dr. Brads, the Dr. Tonys, the group in our nucleus of our trainings, these are chiropractors and teams and staffs that are meant to take care of these kiddos, and we just know how. We know how to connect with them. We know how to bond with them. We know how to use every cheat code and workaround possible to get done what we need to get done. And you'll find in offices like ours the most calming, understanding, empathetic place ever for the family and for the child, and we'll get the job done to get them scanned. Then the second part of it is, the adjustment. Like that's the trickiest question, right? Especially verbally, like, what is an adjustment? What does it look like? What is it? Is it safe? Is it what I think it is, which is Rambo, so sort of moves? And the answer is emphatically no, especially for a littler, wound up kiddo. This goes back to the science. Because they are so stuck in sympathetic tone, every part of their body follows the nervous system. The nervous system perceives and coordinates and controls every single cell and system in the body. So when it's one way, we call it tone or wiring in chiropractic. When its tone of the nervous system is wound up to sympathetics, all of the muscles and all of the joints and everything follows suit. So actually for kids in general, but then double down for kids with ADHD, you actually need to be less of an adjuster. You need to use a lighter touch, a lighter tone, a more specific calming, what we would call a tonal approach, sort of adjusting with these kiddos. Because actually, if you made the regular back pain adult chiropractic adjustment, it would still be and is safe for these kids. Okay, I got to get that out there too. It absolutely is, but there's a difference between safety and we want efficacy too, right? And so when we begin with these cases, especially when they're so wound up, we actually have to use less force and less tension with our adjustments to be more effective. Think of it, moms and dads, like if you took a rubber band or you took a guitar string and you had it so wound, so tight, the more you went at that with the force, the more you'd bounce off. But if you just went on the ends of those strings of that rubber band and you lightly, slowly, easily let it go, you're not going to get that bounce back feature. And so that's again where Dr. Brad and other pediatric chiropractors who focus on these kids like us, it's not only just training, it's experience is really, really what it comes down to, and understanding that. So that's, it's important for every parent on this summit. I'm going to move it past important. Okay. And I don't want you guys to think, moms and dads, that I'm saying this because I've got DC behind my name. Even if I had DC behind the name, but I knew something else was that crucial, that pivotal, and that missing to get your kid better in a drug-free way, I'd emphatically tell you to do that, okay? And I do when that's the case, right? But the truth of the matter is, this is the missing link for so many families. So getting your child under the care of a pediatric chiropractor who is trained and experienced in ADHD, and what we'll talk, right, Dr. Brad, before we get done, we'll help you get to where those important adjectives are there. It's not important. It's paramount. It's crucial. It's a must do. And I think the other things are too. We can't live them, they can't be in a crazy environment eating Kraft mac and cheese and, glycophosphate, burger, right, for lunch either. So those are paramount too. But if you had to rank them, and this again doesn't come as the ranking system because that's my initials and that's my JOB. I don't have a job. I have a calling and a blessing that I get to do. But I'm telling you, chiropractic is more influential than anything else. And that comes from science and that comes from experience. So you're going to start somewhere. Start with the nervous system because that is where the trouble starts from.
So now a parent listening is on board and they're thinking about going in, and we will touch on in a minute how they find, you know, a good person to go to, or what they should be looking for in a chiropractor that would be suitable for their situation. But can you tell us a few, like, either specific or general kind of stories, like how long it takes, what kind of changes you've seen, like some of that kind of stuff for us?
Another great question, man. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to bring math into it. We actually use a lot of math clinically in our practice. We use a lot of math to explain things too, because everybody, like it or love it, everybody's familiar with it, right? As to how that goes. So, you know, age is the biggest factor in this math, right? And then the other one is how many of the perfect storm check boxes did they go through? How bad were they? I mean, we've had C-section delivery a lot of times, right? Because it's been so normalized. It's not that they can just check the box to C-section. I've taken hundreds of case histories where another nurse or somebody was on the table on top of the mom, pressing down on the abdomen while one was yanking the baby. I mean, there's so much physical trauma to the birth that it would so never be allowed, even moments later and for the rest of that child's life, but it's there. So we got to dig into that. And that's another part of the math on it is the real specifics of their case history. What did they have and what didn't they? But yeah, generalizing it across age, which is super important for parents. First off, let me go to the end. Where I started was with 19-year-olds. Where I started was as a 20-year-old with ADHD, struggling. I was going into my junior and senior year, so all of my get out of jail free cards of being able to sit down and smoke a standardized test was going out the window because it was getting harder, right? And all of that flipped on a dime for me at age 20, okay? So that there is no too late to what we call neuroplasticity, right? And neurohealing. The later you are in the game, the longer and the more traditionally it takes to turn that tide. But it does not mean done. It's one of our best stories, and he's just crushing in school. He just went into high school, started with us last year. Had known this mom, and she had known of our work for a long period of time. Nurse practitioner, totally open to what we did. She literally waited for 3 years because she thought her junior high kid, she thought it was too late because she would hear the perfect storm stories and see all the little ones that we would post and put about, and finally got to talk with her after church one day, and she goes, I guess it's just too late for my Skylar. And I was like, what? Shut the front door. You don't know, right? And Skylar's crushing it now. So now that said, teenagers, Skylar was on 6 meds when we met him. He had struggled for nearly, 14 years. That's a longer care plan. It's just, think of it. I need to come up with a better word for this convo here, Dr. Brad, so you got to help me with this. Dosage of chiropractic, right? Everybody gets dosage. That's why I use it. So the longer and the more stress there is, the more they need the chiropractic adjustments and the potency of it. The earlier is the flip, right? It's early intervention. And hopefully you've seen a bunch of good changes with other, PTs or OTs or speech therapies or behavioral counseling, those sort of things. And we know that the earlier those things are applied, the greater their results. Chiropractic fits just the same. The earlier we start adjusting the nervous system and the brainstem and the communication pathways, the earlier they get back online, the earlier the nervous system calms down, they can concentrate, they can control their emotions, they can calm themselves down to sleep, and all of these things in between it. So, the general timeline we see in our clinic is, and again, we take care of a lot of tough cases, so I might be hedged a certain way, but it's 6 to 8 months, initially for most kids. And then again, if they're teenagers, that first 6 to 8 months is still the crucial, but we're looking at a 12, 18, 24 month, total restoration project. Just like I'm in my farmhouse. I live out in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, right? And this renovation of this farmhouse took a long time, right? Because it had been around and had a lot of stuff underneath of it that needed to be rooted out and changed, but so stinking worth it in the end. And again, the good practitioners you're going to find that we'll help you out with here, they're going to know exactly how to do that for your kid and communicate that.
Yeah, well, the part I can see looks really nice back behind you there. So.
This is the guest house in private. When you have 4 little kids, right? You're doing it in your office. It is, and my office is too busy now. I can't do any of my webinars. We're so busy in a great way helping kids. We start early, stay late. We got a whole team of 5 other docs. So we converted this office. They got to get through the garage and 2 doors to get to me tonight. Uh-huh. They're both locked. So they're well-adjusted Chiro kids, and I think my 11-year-old could make it if she really tried. But we're usually pretty safe.
Cool. So yeah, let's get to that. So how does somebody find a chiropractor that would be right for their kid and their family?
Yeah, I gotta give you our channels to it. I've been beating this drum of the perfect storm and pediatric chiropractic for ADHD for a long time, and I've had to mentally beat myself up over this for a long time. I've been in Chicago, and word got out many years ago about the results. And again, I'm a storyteller. I'm a farmer. To put this into context, and we had some opportunities to go on big TV shows, okay, and present basically what we just did tonight. And I know that God has blessed me to deliver the results for these kiddos and to be able to communicate quickly. I'm a fast talker, but with understanding, right, as to what it was. So here's where I'm going with all that. I knew 7-8 years ago when those doors started opening up that if I went on TV and which would be Facebook at that time, and did it, I would never be able to fulfill the requests for all the parents everywhere needing a chiropractor who could actually handle these cases. So 5-6 years ago, I teamed up with another chiropractor, Cali's West Coast guy, Dr. David Jackson, and we created a training program and protocols, everything we've been using and the science we put together, and we trained other chiropractors through that. So our resource and directory is called the National Wellness Foundation. You can either type that in on Facebook and find us on Facebook. And I'd love for parents to do that, because just like Dr. Brad's ADHD channels and the amazing work he does, we're first and foremost about education and information, getting your hope back and getting your answers. And then we're about connecting you to practitioners who are ready to deliver on the goods as well. So we have a directory there. We're coming on about 300 trained and ready pediatric perfect storm chiropractors. I'm relentlessly not happy with that. That's why I fly on planes, right, to Italy and Australia and everywhere else to train chiropractors. We need thousands, because there's way more than 300 kids in every small town everywhere, right, who need this. So you can go to, or the website is the NWF. You can type it all out too, but it'll save you some time. thenwf.org, and you go to find a directory and go there. And then if you want to go even a little bit deeper with me in a couple of weeks through the National Wellness Foundation, like Dr. Brad awesomely does here with the summits, we put on about monthly webinars, and every 3 months I do the Perfect Storm one. And I cannot remember whether it's the 4th or the 6th, whatever the first Tuesday in November is, 8 p.m., same time we went live, so 6 p.m. for the West Coasters. I'm going to do the full Perfect Storm, slides, science, all that sort of stuff. So if you're ready already to get connected with a practitioner, those are our resources. And if you need more information before you make that call, then link up with me and the National Wellness Foundation in November. We'll get that to you. Dr. Brad, do you have channels through what you've been working on?
Yeah, I mean, people can find me on the social media. That's the best place to do it. Truth About ADHD, Dr. Brad Ellis, or that type of stuff. And honestly, if there's somebody in your guys' directory near them, that's the first place I always go. So it's a great resource as far as that goes. And we'll put all the links below this video, all the ones, Dr. Tony just mentioned. So you don't have to be scribbling them down. I guess I should have told you already. But yeah, we'll put them all down there in the comments. And so you can just click through that way.
And if they don't find somebody, message Dr. Brad, or, you can send a message through the National Wellness Foundation. We've got a great support team through there, who are literally everybody that works for my practice and the NWF are all what used to be Perfect Storm moms, right? They've been in the storm and out of it, so they're more even committed to us. We affectionately call them chiropractic assistants, is what the regular term is. Brad, I refer to them as chiropractic evangelists. Uh-huh. They will drive to your house in Louisiana and drive you to Crystal Lake to get your child, these results. And so, yeah, we'll help you even if somebody doesn't pop up.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much for joining us, for sharing some of that great chiropractic neurology, really landing it, that how important, that nervous system really is, and how vital of a piece that is to the puzzle. And really, one of the ways I always talk about it, and you probably mentioned something like this, but really, I mean, if you think about the brain, it's really the master controller of the whole body. So if something's out of sync there, it almost doesn't matter what else you do at that point until you get that in order. And then all that other stuff can work, and so totally vital. So, I really want to say I appreciate what you guys are doing with the National Wellness Foundation, and having a directory, certainly the training first and foremost, but then having a resource, because we get that a lot. I have people that move and they're like, well, who do I find? And so, I look it up, and I'm trying to search people's websites and try to find little key things that indicate who might, be the one for them to see. So, Yeah, we got to get that bigger certainly than 300. And
Yeah, we do. And that's where, we keep working together. I think that'd be a powerful, link up and doing that. Cause again, it's the understanding of the science. Well, actually before that, it's really, you need a practitioner and a chiropractor who really understands the struggles that you're going through as moms and dads, and doesn't just see it as, oh, it's on the piece of paper, it was taught to me in a class. Like, they really get it. They really care, right? For them to provide the best care, clinical care, they need to care the most. And you'll find that amongst these folks. And then it's the science, the communication. And I really think the technology is crucial too. I know we touched on it tonight, but the technology is also what we use to continue to chart the course of care. So we run those scans every 30 days. So we know that we're making real, functional, long-lasting changes. And that's what we really want for our parents when our kids are struggling is, of course, put the fire out when it's brewing, but we don't want to come back either, so having that technology is crucial to stay through the course of care.
Totally. Well, awesome stuff. I appreciate it. And, we'll be in touch. I'm sure that you guys will get a lot of hits. I already saw the comments starting to come in on this, how do I find a chiropractor? How do I find it? That was one of the main things. So I know that comes up a lot. So definitely everybody check out. I'll put the links below, like I said. And I know you're off to share some more of your brilliance on another channel right after this. So
I'm talking to people, and I'm going to transpose myself to tomorrow somehow. I'm doing an online summit in Australia now tomorrow.
Awesome.
So
well, it's that time, right? Technology can help spread this message of hope for sure. Awesome.
Hey, well, thank you, Dr. Brad. Thank you, moms and dads, for giving me your time tonight. Do not ever give up hope for your kiddos. Keep finding answers, especially the ones that start with the nervous system. Get in there, follow those links, watch the webinars, do what you need to do. Reach out to Brad and I if you need help. We'll get you connected. And I can't wait I'm going to stay tuned into your stories through Dr. Brad and the channels. I can't wait to hear the stories of your kids thriving instead of struggling. So appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Night.